Could emotions be behind the chronic pain or chronic health condition you're experiencing? Well, according to my guest today, the answer is yes, nearly always yes. This is Wellness by Design. I'm your host, Jane Hogan, the Wellness Engineer. And today, my guest is Helen Armstrong. Now, Helen was in corporate America for 27 years and decided that she was going to finally live her truth. And now she's a holistic health practitioner and she helps people clear emotions, energy, and help them restore wellness again. So today we talk a lot about emotions and how emotions can trigger health conditions. And also, she teaches us a really great practice on how to clear emotions, other people's emotions that sometimes we take on, and your own emotions in a really great practice. So make sure you stay tuned till the end. All right, let's dive in. See you inside the episode. Helen Armstrong, welcome to Wellness by Design today. I'm so excited that you're here. We're friends, and I've been dying to have you on the podcast. So, welcome, Helen.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and spend time with you and your community.
Well, I'm so excited to introduce you to them. So, actually, why don't you tell us about what you do and how you got into doing what you do now?
Okay, I'd love to. So I'm Helen. I'm the co-owner of a holistic healing center in Charlotte, North Carolina called Divine Health Alliance, but we do both in-person and remote healing work. Our focus is really on holistic healing, so body, mind, and spirit. So my business partner, Jennifer Payer, who I think has actually spent some time on this podcast, it does holistic health assessments where we look and assess what's going on in the body. Most people show up because they have a physical issue, chronic pain, gut issues, brain fog, etc. And so we will tap in and use muscle testing to ascertain and understand what are the organs in the body that are asking for the most support or the systems. And then kind of our specialty is asking, where did it start? So did this issue truly start on a physical level, or perhaps did it start on an emotional, the terms we use are emotional, past trauma, or spiritual level. And more often than not, the issues that show up typically started in these other levels. And so, not to go off on too big of a tangent, but we all have an energy field, and a lot of times traumatic things that happen to us create blocks in our bodies, which ultimately take a while to manifest in the physical. So that's where I come in, and my specialty is really around the emotional release, past trauma release, and kind of aligning spiritual alignment. So a lot of it, I start with a technique called the emotion code, which is really around where do we have trapped emotions in our bodies and how do they show up, and releasing those. And then I just go where the energy takes me, whether that is, again, the past trauma or spiritual work. And
I love it. And I love that you are embracing like who you really are, because you and I have similar backgrounds with British parents. I know you were born in England, but uh, you were actually in the corporate world for a long time and kind of denying this part of you, right? You want to talk about that a little bit?
yeah. I mean, that's been a big piece of my journey. So, yep, grew up with a very British family, hugely emotional. I'm a massive empath. So that's people who I take on other people's emotions. I feel other people's emotions. Did that my whole life, unknowing, not being aware. Went into corporate America because it was what I was supposed to do. It was, my dad actually said, you need a vocation, Helen, as a good British parent, and tried to push me towards engineering. And that was, I was able to use my voice and fought that and said, no, I don't want to do engineering. But wound up in corporate America as an HR executive for 27 years. So I do feel like some of these gifts, I used them unknowingly, right? In terms of I was able to really see people connect dots that other people couldn't connect, understand what people's skills and abilities were, and perhaps where they could best plug into the organization. So it was a lot of strategic HR.
Mhm.
But yeah, the spiritual gifts that I have and emotional release work, that was really taking a path through my own healing, right? And digging in
Mm.
and figuring out what I needed to do, which then opened up this world of, I think the term we use a lot in this space is pain to purpose. So my
Mhm.
own pain, my own challenges then became, wait a minute, this is what I need to be doing and bringing this gift to the world and owning it.
Mm. I think there comes a point, and I felt this too. Well, I had this physical illness which drew
Yep.
me to it, but you kind of get to a point. I think the people that are in my audience are these kind of people. It's like, all right, something's got to give because I've been giving far too much for far too long. A lot of people with chronic pain, when I do my webinars, like, how many people here are people pleasers? How many people,
Yep.
they're all like, ugh. They're all doing that. They're giving a lot of people in the caring professions as well. I mean, I wasn't really doing that in engineering, but a lot of like nurses and teachers and people like that are always giving, giving, giving. They were drawn to those kind of professions, but then they're giving in their own life as well. And then it's kind of like just given too much. Okay, you said that when people come to you, it's because they got some kind of illness, pain, or some other illness, and the cause could be physical or mental or emotional or spiritual. So
Right.
how is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah. You
Okay.
got it.
Yeah. So how often is it just physical, like percentage wise? Could you even put a number on that?
I mean, hardly ever, quite honestly. And especially when we're talking about chronic conditions. Sometimes people will show up with acute respiratory issues, or, we have light therapy devices and we use embryonic plant stem cells. So if it's a short term and acute issue, it but I mean, honestly, Jane, I can't even think the last time we saw somebody come in that it truly was purely physical. It's very
Mm.
uncommon.
That's what I see too. There's almost always these other components going on. A lot of emotional. And also, I mean, from what I've read about this energetic, sometimes we can have things, as you said, they can be in the energy in our energetic body first, and then they come through like into the physical if they
Right.
aren't cleared out there. Also, I know that like when we work on the physical, like think we can make progress, right? Like I did that. I was like
Absolutely.
doing the diet and getting good sleep, and there's nothing wrong with those things. But when we work on that energetic level, it's faster, right? Isn't that what you see? Like it's quicker.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had my own health journeys. I had thyroid issues. I've struggled with weight most of my life. I had an eating disorder. I think a lot of that was not growing up in an environment where an emotional person was really understood or acknowledged. And I
Mm,
also would take on other people's emotions and get overwhelmed by that and push the emotions down using either create structure of not eating anything at all and being very regimented, or the opposite of that, of just shoving food in my face to try and numb the emotions, right, and push those down. And I went to therapy for years, right, and did the talk therapy thing. But it's really easy. I'm not to compartmentalize and keep things in your head and not really tap into the emotional component. So
mm.
once I started doing this energy and emotional work, yeah, I feel like years fell off me. Health, what my thyroid issue cleared up. The thyroid is hugely associated with the throat chakra, using our voices,
All
standing
about
in
expression.
standing in our authenticity, standing in our power. It's also about receiving. So being able to receive, and to your point, so many of us are, it's so much easier to give, 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 give and we might not think we're worthy of receiving. So in doing this work, yeah, I just got chills. It's so much more powerful to really clear things out at the root. Because to your point, the physical things, you can keep doing them, but you've got to really figure out what's at the root of this and how do we
Exactly.
fix the root issue versus just keep treating the symptoms.
So, how do you begin by identifying the root issue then? I know you mentioned muscle testing. Like, what other tools do you have?
Yeah. So I use a technique called the emotion code. And that's for me, that's my foray in. So it's muscle testing. And again, you can do this in person or remote.
Mhm.
And literally, the thing I love about it is the client doesn't have to know what the trauma is. It's literally, we will muscle test and ask. Typically, I'll cast the net wide and just say, what are the emotions having the biggest impact on Jane not living her highest, most vibrant life? And through the muscle testing, there's a chart of 60 different emotions, and we'll hone in on what the emotion is. And oftentimes I'll share that with an individual, and they'll go, if it's guilt, I felt guilt. Yeah, I had a guilty complex my whole life. Or somebody might go, nope, that doesn't really resonate. And then we can dig a little deeper and ask more questions. Was it a specific incident? Did we come in carrying it, right? Did we inherit it from our parents? Like worthiness for women shows up all the time. And more often than not, some of it's ours, but it's this ancestral thread that we kind of came in carrying, or a backpack of energy. And so it feels like it's ours, but it isn't. Right. So we can go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I haven't been certified in the emotion code, but I've done some work with it
Yeah.
and on myself, right? Because,
Yeah.
of course we practice on ourselves first,
Yeah.
but other people. And I was surprised one day to uncover the emotion of, I mean, it's not really an emotion, but blame. And
Yeah.
I kind of went back and went back and was like, okay, it wasn't me. It went back 7 generations.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. We
Well,
see
sounds
that.
crazy, but it made sense. Like I know that was what I grew up in, was this always blaming. It's always someone else's fault. And so, gosh, I mean, it really sets us back and makes us feel like a victim when it's someone else's fault all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. And I mean, the analogy I use, it's kind of this backpack that we come in carrying that we don't even realize is there. And it has a frequency and a vibration that, gets stuck and trapped within us. So yeah, the thing I love about this, when we clear out the emotions, people typically look like different people, lighter, brighter, because again, you're carrying around this load and muck that, one, you might be aware of it and know what it is, or two, you might not have any idea and not know that you're carrying other people's things.
Mm-hmm. So I think people listening or watching can probably relate to that. Like I know, yeah, I heard this kind of, I got this emotion. I know there was that there from when I was growing up. Um, they may be less clear on like how does it get stuck and how do they release it?
Yeah. So the way I describe, typically when emotions get stuck, we go through a trauma or have an event. If we, at the moment, at the time that it happens, one, either don't realize it's happening or it's too overwhelming for us and we can't process it at the time, take it and literally push it down. And the analogy I use is like a balloon full of air. The emotion itself, if you just kind of popped the balloon and let it go, wouldn't be an issue. But most of us take it and push it down. And again, the analogy, pushing it underwater, right? It takes a ton of energy to push those emotions down. And it's all happening at a subconscious level. I mean, some of us might be aware of, we hear that I don't want to go there, or yes, that happened to me, but I'm done. I've dealt with it. I'm done with it. And you might be done with it in your brain and have compartmentalized it, but your energetic body is not done with it and is still pushing it down.
Mm.
So that's the first thing, right? You're burning a lot of calories and expending a lot of energy, pushing these emotions down, which it's energy you could be using to heal, and have energy flowing in your body. And then the second thing I'll say is whatever the emotion is, most of them are negative emotions and have a much lower vibration and frequency than we want in our bodies. So
Mm.
if you have anger and you're pushing that down, that energy is now buzzing and vibrating in your body and creating an energetic frequency of anger, which is low energy. And
Certainly
that's
not
where,
a healing energy.
right. And that's where disease
Mm.
starts, right? Lower energy vibrate. I mean, even fear is a low energy. I think there's a chart, and the lowest energy is shame.
I know.
And so many of us have struggled with that. That's not guilt. I feel guilty that I ate that piece of cake, or I'm shameful. I'm a bad person because I ate that piece of cake. Right. And so
Right.
many of us just beat ourselves up and have that. So
Mm.
just imagine yourselves living in this environment of shame.
Right.
Like,
And
how,
it
how can they vibrate and be healthy? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I think of it sometimes as like a marinade almost, like the cells are marinating
Yeah.
in this, and so
Yeah.
they're picking up
Yeah.
on that. I love that balloon analogy you talked about, because we can all imagine like trying to push that down, like say underwater, and also hold it there.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a lot of energy.
Well,
And
yeah.
then I want
How do
like
we release
this is
them?
something that would happen to me, Helen, once in a while. I wonder if anyone listening can relate to this as well. I was holding stuff down so well, holding it all
Oh
together.
yeah.
I'm like the engineer, right? But something could trigger me, and I would just start crying and be unable to stop.
Yeah.
Like I'd be
Yeah.
crying like for a little tiny thing, a little criticism or something like that. And I was down for the count. And I wonder, like, is that a sign? Is that kind of typical of people that are really holding an emotion down in your
Yeah, I
experience?
think that's another good example of that vibration and the frequency. Perhaps they're one, you're I got it, I'm keeping it all together. And at some point, if you're squeezing a balloon, you're squeezing it down, it pops up somewhere else where you least expect it to,
Mhm.
which would be the cry, right? I'm trying not to cry, I'm trying not to cry, and then you can't stop. But the other thing could be the emotion itself has a vibration and a frequency, so it's more likely to trigger you. So if something um you know it, that makes me think, sadness, there's an element of sadness that if
Yeah.
something comes at you that somebody else it just might roll off their back or it wouldn't trigger them, it's going to trigger you because you have that vibration and frequency in your body.
And for
That
someone else, it could be anger, right? They just like fly
totally,
off
yeah.
the handle.
Yes. I mean, and that happens a lot, right? You've got the emotion of anger trapped, and then somebody cuts you off in traffic, and I go, oh, what a jerk. And somebody else explodes, right?
That's interesting. I haven't thought about that before, that it's what comes out is the underlying emotion that's being repressed.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, fear and anxiety are probably two of the biggest ones we see. Like people are like, oh, I'm very anxious or I have anxiety. A lot of times that's because something happened to them in their past that imprinted that angst and terror in them. And so anything that comes at them that could go wrong or could trigger that is gonna, you know, reenact that vibration in their body.
Mm. But here's the thing that I have seen and I experience myself, and maybe you as well, is that it's this kind of feeling of unease, whatever the emotion is, it's become so normal that you don't even notice it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very true. And that's where, so many people will show up and we have a little intake form that people fill out beforehand. And we ask, have you experienced any trauma in your recent or in the, and a lot of people are like, nope, no trauma, nothing. And then, we kind of go, oh, this started on the emotional level. And that's what I love about emotion code is you don't need to know or you don't need to be aware. because most of us have gotten so used to it. Or there are things that, we came in carrying or that happened to, I mean, even a lot of us grew up in the Dr. Spock era of child rearing, and it was if your child is crying, just leave them.
Mhm.
So, hello, abandonment, right? Like that creates. So your parents were doing the best job they knew how to do. They were following the expert, but what did that create in the baby was I've been left, no one's coming. So you've
Right.
got this vibration of abandonment. And then that might show up later in your life where you're, always worried people are going to leave you, or you push people away so they can't get close to you, or you have gut issues because where would you feel abandonment in your gut? So, I
Mhm.
mean, that's an example of where it might not even be a quote unquote significant trauma, but it still had a vibrational impact on you, right? And
Mhm.
I think that's a great example of one you would never really be aware of.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And another thing, as I've seen this with people as well, as they kind of start uncovering, and there's a lot of talk now about childhood trauma and how it's impacting health. We don't want to get into that blaming and being resentful for that. And you talked about it there. There's such a great point that, our parents, and whoever was in our lives when
Right.
this trauma happened, they were doing the best they could with what they knew. So we
Right.
don't want to build up any resentment or blame, because that's another negative
That's
emotion, and then we'll
another
just have to deal
one.
with
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where I was going wrong. I didn't realize I was carrying all this for so long as well. But it's so interesting, right? Uncovering, like, how many emotions do people usually have trapped? I mean, when I read the book, he said most people have hundreds. I mean,
Hundreds, yeah,
yeah.
hundreds. But what I like to do is really go for the heavy hitters.
Mhm.
So, for most people, we have significant ones that, depending, again, I'll cast the net wide. What are the ones having the biggest impact? Or if somebody, truly does. I worked with a woman the other day that has rheumatoid arthritis, and her foot, she could barely walk, and we were like, all right, what's the emotion trapped that's creating this specific issue? So in a typical session we can clear 5 to 10
Mhm.
trapped emotions. And the way I do it, I clear the emotion, but I go a little deeper if there's anything energetic stuck as well. If I get guided to do other things, I'll do that. But in her example, it was rigidity, not being heard, taken for granted, all kinds of things, right?
I
That
had rheumatoid arthritis as well. I get all of those
right,
emotions. I
yeah.
mean,
So
yeah.
it was, taken for granted, not feeling heard. And so we honed in on that. If she came
Mhm.
back another time, we might just say, okay, what else do we need to focus on? So yes, hundreds of trapped emotions. I think some have a much bigger impact on us than others.
Mhm.
And so, it's a number of sessions, I think, to clear out the big dogs, right? And the ones
Mhm.
that are causing the most issues. And then I think it's, teaching people techniques to help clear their own energy and to help understand when they're taking on emotions from other people, and really empowering people to know that we all have the ability to kind of recognize these things and clear them on our
Mm.
own.
I love that, Helen. And well, this show is all about empowerment. So let's talk about that. How to recognize these and how to do your own kind of clearing.
Yeah.
Where do you begin with that?
So one of the things, I mean, again, I'm a huge empath, so I feel other people's emotions. And so one of the things I do that it has become a regular, I mean, even when I drive to work to our healing center, sometimes I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm going to be sick, or wow, I'm really anxious. And so the thing I literally ask myself, is this mine? And I take the first pop that comes into my head. And it's typically a yes or a no. And quite honestly, most of the time, it's a no.
Mhm.
So I'm literally asking, I feel anxious, I'm jittery. Is this mine? I'll hear no in my head. And I'm like, okay, thank you for the information. That's interesting because it's typically the client I'm about to see. So the information is helpful, but I clear that out of my system. That's not mine. It's not my responsibility to hold that. I mean,
And
that is
so
a
you just
what?
say that.
Yeah,
It's an
yeah.
intention.
So literally setting the intention. I mean, there are other things I do to protect my energy as an empath. I'm big into essential oils. There are, certain oils. White sage is good for clearing energy. Eastern white cedar is amazing. Um, I use a lot of crystals. So crystals are good for like black tourmaline, any of the dark grounding crystals associated kind of with the root chakra are good for protection and clearing. Um,
How do you use them, Helen? Like, how do you use the essential oils? Do you put them like in a diffuser or do you put them on you?
Yeah, all of the above. So yeah, we actually, Jen, my business partner, has a line of essential oils with Nature Provides that are amazing. So I have a diffuser behind me right now. So those are great. They hit the limbic system immediately and can kind of shift and change moods. When I'm using them for protection, I will put them on certain parts of my body. Most of us tend to absorb and take in energy in certain spots. So, kind of depending on, for me, I absorb things through my throat, which is interesting. Because of the struggles I've had, thyroid, using my voice, standing in my power. So, I'll put them literally on my throat. A lot of us take them in our solar plexus or our gut, right? So, if you're feeling like somebody punched you in the stomach or feeling nauseous or uneasy. I'll use like frankincense is a great one for protection. When I wake up in the morning, I'll put some frankincense on my tummy. And chakras have entry points front and back. So
Right.
it's always good if you can to put it on your front and your back for protection and clearing.
Mm,
Or you can just put them in your hands and waft them over you and almost envision taking a shower to clear energy. But most
right.
importantly, it's intention,
Yeah, yeah, I was just
right?
going to say that. So it's setting the intention. Okay, this is what I want from
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah. So even if you didn't have those things, you could still set an intention for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I do that every morning. I will wake up and clear my own energy and literally see that energy, anything that I've picked up kind of falling off me, falling to the ground. It's the intention that feels right to you. So if you like the backpack analogy of like, oh, I've picked up a bunch of rocks and emotions and other people's feelings in my backpack, we'll take your backpack off and leave
Mm,
it at the door. Some people like white light and like to envision kind of gold or white light coming from the sky and showering them. The thing I love about it's you've got to make this yours and you have to make it work for you. So what one person does, I've so many times we go to training or thing where people say to do something and you're like, it doesn't, I'm going to do it. I'm going through the motions. I would say with it, you have to feel it and it has to work for you.
hmm Do you do a practice like before going to bed at night? Or is it like as you leave your office, or do you have anything like in the day?
Both, just with the business that we're in, and because I pick up energy, I will clear. A lot of times I'll just take my arms and kind of envision brushing the energy off me. At night, I will do, we talked a little bit about this a minute ago. I will do I release anything that is not mine to carry, is not of my highest best purpose. I release that. You can release it to the earth. I release it to God. I release it to source. And I am clean and clear. And
Mm,
then one of the other things, well, as most of us are givers and people pleasers, we have given out energy all day long. And so you want to call your energy back to you again to create wholeness for yourself so that you can heal.
hmm
So You want to, typically I will say I will call my energy back to any energy I've given out today. I call that energy back to me clean and clear, and kind of see that lighting up my body. If you're familiar with the chakra system, see that lighting up your chakras. If you're familiar with Chinese medicine and the meridians, see that energy kind of flowing through your meridians. Again, it's what works for you.
Mm,
I don't want to tell you to call your energy back in a way that you're like, I don't get that, or it doesn't make sense. Like you want to do it in a way that is call it back and envision wrapping a big blanket around you of
mm.
your clean energy, right?
I love that that people have the freedom to do whatever works for them. And so experiment, right? Try
Yeah,
different little visualizations and see
yeah,
what works and notice how you feel. How does it feel
absolutely.
for you?
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
what how do you ever see people, Helen, that like just can't feel? And how do you help them feel more? Because like a lot of I do a lot of stuff like that as well, and feeling into the body. And some people are just can't feel anything. They're like here and up, right? They're just in their
Yep.
heads. So
Yeah.
how do you help people feel more in their body?
Yeah, I mean that is also a big coping mechanism, right? Of wanting to stay in your head.
Yeah.
Kind of the comment we use a lot is that we're spiritual beings and but we came here for a physical and human experience. So literally envisioning our energy pushing down into our bodies and all the way down to our feet. And if somebody's not as into the spiritual practice, or go outside, putting your feet on the ground, putting your
Mhm.
feet in the dirt, holding a tree, and just literally feeling rooted to the earth. Most people, even if they're like, I can't feel that, or can feel the comfort of like, okay, I feel safe. This feels safe to me. And I mean, that really triggers another thought for me is at the end of the day, most people that can't feel in their body, it's because it has never felt safe to be in their body.
Mm.
And their energy has kind of typically, again, the other thing that happens with trauma, if we have trauma or we have experiences over and over again, we leave our bodies a lot. Um, and so this is about creating, here's a great practice I use, is to literally say your name. So I would say, my name is Helen Armstrong. Like today is November 19th, 2024, and you want to say the actual and whatever the day is when this broad airs, but whatever the day is, and you want to say the year to
Mhm.
ground you, and then literally look to the left, look to the right, and I am safe.
Mm.
So you are bringing yourself back into your body and into the present, because of the so many of the issues we have are because we're looking backwards at what happened to me in the past and what was the trauma, what was unfair, what has been done to me, or looking at the future, what's coming, I'm scared, am I ever going to get better? I'm worried about X, Y, and Z. And so it's just coming back into
Right.
the present and into the present space. So
It
I would invite anybody to do that. Anytime if you start to get anxious or overwhelmed, just
That's a
coming into.
really great practice, Helen, because though that thinking of ruminating over the past or worrying about the future, both of those create the emotions that are generally not the kind not healing
Not
emotions,
healing
right?
or healthy. Yeah.
Right. So now there are times when you can look at back on something joyful, and that's
Yeah.
fine, or looking
Yeah.
ahead at something that a goal that you have that excites you, and that's okay. But we're talking about the worrying and the
Yeah, when
rumination.
you're in a moment of anxiousness or anxiety, or I can't
Yeah.
tap into my body, or I can't feel anything, well, the first question I would ask is, do you feel safe?
Mm,
Was it safe in your body growing up? Was it safe to be you? And most of the time, the answer is no. So that's one
Yeah.
practice. Or they may not even real like, oh, I was safe, but
Yeah.
did you feel safe to? It might have been physically safe, but you may not have felt safe being you, right? If
Mm.
you had the parents that were, don't do that, don't touch that, stop crying, stop, stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about, or, the stiff upper lip we grew up with,
Yeah.
it wasn't safe to be you.
Hmm. And then you mentioned right in the beginning about like unworthiness being a very common emotion, and that is a form of not feeling safe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great connection. Yeah,
Yeah.
not enough, not safe, not deserving of being in my body, right? My body is where I need to feel safe. And if I don't feel deserving of being in my body, or I've convinced myself I'm not deserving or worthy of being healthy. We see
Right.
that a lot where people have these mind loops and limiting beliefs of I don't deserve to be healthy. And they don't even realize they're doing it.
Hmm. So when someone comes to see you, do they have like takeaways for them to kind of work on in the homework in between, or
Yeah, I mean, it really kind of depends on who the person is and what has shown up for them. So a lot of the tools we just talked about, right? The clearing the energy. If somebody is an empath or is in an environment that is perhaps not the healthiest for them, right? Or family situation that they can't change, right? So how do we help clear your energy? How do we help you not take those things on? um how are there essential oils that are takeaways? Is there journaling? It really kind of it's very person specific in
right?
terms of what's going to support them and what are they going to do, right? We also don't want to give, we're very conscious of not giving people a laundry list of 50 things to do. It's, what are the two or three things that are realistic that they're willing to kind of work into their day. I mean, it
Yeah.
could even be listening to Hertz frequency music,
Hmm.
to bolster a certain chakra system or energy system in their body or calm their nervous system.
Mm. I love all of that. All of that. So, Helen, I always ask my guests this question, and that's because it's all about empowerment and taking a one step, the first step, the baby step, right? One after the other. So, what would you say is the first step someone could take today that's going to help support their body's healing? What would you say could be the one
I
big
think it's clean. I really do think it's recognizing and clearing your energy. So we take showers usually every day.
Mhm.
And so you have good physical hygiene. We need to have good energetic hygiene. And so it's literally as simple as what we talked about of clearing and clearing your energy.
Mm.
Yep. So wiping the muck and the things off you that you have picked up from other people. And it doesn't even have to be people in your day-to-day life. It can just be the collective consciousness, right? And here in the US, right, doesn't matter what side you were on, the election just created so much energy and angst. So I was, feverishly clearing my energy on a regular basis to just, this doesn't support me and I don't
Right.
need to take this on. So, again, whatever works for you, whether if it's that white light, if it's brushing the energy off, if it's an actual shower, taking
Hmm.
off your backpack, clearing your energy before you go to bed every night, and calling your energy back to you.
Well, I love that. Now, for the people that are only listening and not watching, I just realized this that you couldn't see what we're doing. So,
Yep.
so Helen is like brushing one hand on the like opposite arm and down on the other arm as well. So, like it's we learned this in Reiki too. It's like you're
Yeah.
brushing
Yeah.
off, right?
I mean,
And
just
kind of
envision your somebody came and sprayed a bunch of dirt and dust on you. What would you want to do? You'd want to brush it off you. So you're
yeah.
literally doing it's the same thing. It's energetic dirt, dust, and grime. And you just want to envision wiping that off you and sending it to the ground.
I love it. I love it. Helen, where can people now you work with people obviously in clinic. Do you also do virtual work as well?
Yeah, yeah. So the beautiful, amazing, it's all energy. So this works. This works in
Yes.
person and remotely. And oftentimes I find the remote sessions are even more powerful because people are in the comfort of their own environment. And we can just kind of again go where the energy flows. But the best way to find me is our website is Divine Health Alliance. So it's www.divinehealthalliance.com, or our email is hello@Divine Health Alliance.
Okay, and we'll have those in the in the notes. So if you want to find Helen, you can do that. So Helen, thank you so much for being
You're
a
so
guest.
welcome. This was so much fun.
It was fun, and I know that people got a lot out of it. So this is something the people that are watching and listening, something for you to think about at the end of the day. Think about clearing your energy and just really inviting in purity so that you
Yeah.
can let that go.
And yeah, and raise your vibration for healing and health, right? Same way you shower, clear your energy and
Yes.
create a clean slate to bring in health and healing.
I love it. And being aware of your emotions and are your emotions supporting your healing, or are they
Right.
creating that vibration where it's not necessarily supporting healing? So
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you, Helen, for your work in the world, for being such a beautiful, bright, energetic light. I'm really happy to know you and happy that you were here today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
All right, everyone watching, listening, we'll see you again soon on Wellness by Design. And thank you so much for joining us today.